For me, that voice that came in that invocation, for me, that was the beginning of my real spiritual journey. When I heard that voice, I was journaling as I'd always journaled. I was in divinity school, and that voice came through, and I didn't know if I had completely gone insane or was channeling some crazy lady, and it took a very, very long time and a practice, a pilgrimage really, for me to get to a place to understand that that voice is me, is my truth, is the highest version of who I am, is the voice of my soul. And my whole journey has been about figuring out, how do I reconcile that voice, which is eternal and wise beyond conscious reasoning? How do I get that voice and that truth in alignment with everything I say and do? How do I become the truth that I know I am? For me, my being called wasn't obviously called to a traditional form of ministry, but I was called nonetheless, and this happened at St. Elizabeth's. It was a treatment center, Catholic Charities Treatment Center in San Francisco, and there was a pregnant teen there who I had been counseling for over a year, and she was just about ready to give birth. And she told me that she needed God in that moment. And of course, I knew her story. I knew that she had been raped. I knew that she had been kicked out of her house for being pregnant. I knew that she had gone into prostitution in order to try to support herself. And I knew through the year of knowing her that she felt like her body was nothing, that she was nothing. And for me, in that moment, I wanted nothing else. Nothing for myself, and I know all of you have felt this. I wanted more than anything in the world to be able to hand her this manual, this guidebook, this way for her to reach the love that I could see in her eyes. It was staring right back at me. But she couldn't see it, and she couldn't feel it, because she had never known love. No one had ever shown her love and reflected that back to her. So there I was, with this teen and this crazy, broken open heart and amount of love for her, and in that moment I knew that that was my calling. I had to figure out, how do I find the way to be able, in this moment, because I had nothing to offer her, nothing. How do I figure out a way to create something so that I can actually be there for women who are in that position, who are in that moment of wanting to experience and know love, but not feeling it, having no idea how to get there. And of course, just like that parable about the man who goes searching for the bread, knocking on, and then ends up receiving bread himself. My story of going out there and trying to find what I couldn't offer this teen in that moment was what I needed. I needed to find a way to know that my body is sacred. I needed to figure out a way to know that I am worthy, just as I am. And so this sent me on a pilgrimage, literally. Figuratively, yes, but also literally. Shortly after encountering the pregnant teen, I went on a pilgrimage to Mary Magdalene and the Black Madonna all throughout Europe. And at one particular site of the Black Madonna of Vesuvius, I ended up falling to my knees. And this would end up happening again and again in my life. I call it being need. It's kind of an occupational hazard for being a mystic. But the first time it happened, what it revealed to me was really powerful, and it was that there was some core belief in me that finding the divine meant searching outside of myself, finding a person or a book or a thing or something. I had to reach up out of myself to attain it. And also, there was some belief that I had to deny my body or abandon my body in order to reach the divine. And for me, when I was down on my knees, I mean, that tour group made a whole lot of fuss about what was going on for me, okay? Like, they were screaming, you know, Jesus and saying that, you know, souls are flying everywhere and there were angels and all that. And maybe there were, but for me, all it was being simply in my body. I was fully in my body and unafraid, and that was it. And that, to me, allowed me to hear the voice of my soul with utter clarity. No drama, no disco lights and horns, nothing. Just me and my soul, which obviously is so much more than me. And that was it. That, to me, I learned that day, is my spiritual path. Not moving away from the body, but daring to really come home to the body, be fully in the body, and to know that this is how I know who I am. This is how I hear what's true for me. This is how I can remain connected to that voice that at first I could only connect to in my journal with red ink. After that experience with the Black Madonna of Vesuvius, I could hear it, whoa. I could hear it whenever I needed to, which was also something that really transformed my idea of what it means to be divine or spiritual or sacred, because, you know, I'd always been superimposing this idea of, like, you know, if you're spiritual, you need a cushion, you need a bell, you need like a whole bunch of beads and incense and like 30 minutes every morning at the crack of dawn, which doesn't happen for me. And there was judgment around the fact that that just wasn't me. That was nothing I craved on any level. And after that experience with the Black Madonna of Vesuvius, I really understood that for me, that connection, it's what I want all the time, every day, every breath. You know, I don't just want it on a Sunday or on a special occasion or a holiday. I want every single moment of my life to be about that alignment with that voice of truth inside of me. So I started to ask the question, what does a spirituality look like for a woman who refuses to abandon her own body? What does that look like? And when I got back from the pilgrimage, I started gathering women together, and we began to explore that through a women's spirituality group I call the Red Ladies. And over the years, over a decade, what I began to see was this similarity, these like 7 threads that we all seem to present and that we all seem to crave out of a spirituality. We wanted, first of all, to have at the forefront a sense of not being victims, of being authors of our own stories, of allowing ourselves to say, no matter what comes our way, we are going to let it cultivate our capacity to love. Boom! There's nothing more powerful than that. You have something that someone would think, oh, that's gonna break her. That is gonna flatten her out, and you're like, that is only gonna make me more love. It's like, there's nothing more powerful. I mean, and in all seriousness, I'm talking about really hard things, like divorce, like heartbreak, like abuse. I mean, but if we can reach the place that the soul sees our story rather than the ego, we can see that yes, even this can make us more light, more love. Then there was this feeling of, yeah, we want to know and to claim our bodies as sacred. What is this? Really? Like, it's very, very funny on a not, again, haha level, but women's bodies reconstitute the world. Somehow people forget this or have forgotten this. Our bodies reconstitute the world. How our bodies have been denigrated and considered less less than, considered less holy because we bleed. And the power of being able for us to say, yes, woman code, Lisa Vitti, our menses are sacred. Had petri dishes of menses in front of Dr. Oz. That's what I'm talking about. And she held it, and she was fierce. I was totally blushing for her, at home watching it. She held it, and she was fierce because that's the truth. This is holy stuff here. This is sacred. This makes it so that we can regenerate the world. So claiming our bodies as sacred. Then also a real deep, fiery need for all of us to be able to connect to that voice, that soul voice inside of us, whatever you want to call it, your truth, your snookums. It doesn't matter what it is, but you know what it is. You know what it feels like. If you don't hear it as a voice, you might hear it or feel it as a sensation, like honey suddenly suffusing your bones. Maybe it's a sensation, maybe it's a flash of wisdom. Maybe it's something that comes to you, but you know. If any one of you walk up to me and you say, I don't know what you're talking about, I'm going to stare at you until you do. And I mean it, try me. Because you do know at some point in your life, whether it was a moment of terror or a moment of joy, you have felt that voice of truth inside you. I call it my soul voice. You can call it whatever you want. But there's a deep desire among us to be intimate with it. Even as intimate as we would be a lover, a beloved. Then also there's a deep desire for divine worth, a sense of worth in the world. That we finally understand that worth is not something anyone's ever going to give us. Worth is something we have to claim. A sense of mysticism in our life, a sense of knowing that no one can keep us out from a direct connection to the divine. We are all directly connected to the divine from within. Work with meaning, purpose, a sense of having that alignment, that we are hearing what is highest from the voice of our soul, and we are moving out into the world and doing that, whatever it looks like. And for me, that moment just came recently. I was asked to speak at the Bailey House, and how this all came about, completely spirit. And I was able to speak to a group of women who are all living with HIV, single moms, and talk about Reveal and hand out the book. And this one woman came up to me and literally recounted almost exactly the story of that teen. She had always been in a system. She had been raped and abused. She had never known love. And she kept asking me, how do I find love? How do I find love when I've never felt it? I've never been shown it. And of course, she's looking at me with love just pouring out of her, making, tears stream down my face. And I felt chills, and I felt my soul so inside my skin. I reached over and I picked up Reveal, and I handed the book to her. And it's very difficult to describe the level of completion, the level of knowing. No one outside of me is ever going to be able to say, oh, here's your gold watch, Meg, you did it. All I can ever do is to say, from inside, to avere, to recognize inside, I did the work my soul asked me to. And the level of bliss and abundance and love is just indescribable, that I could hand that book to her. And the final piece is spiritual community, which is why Reveal, why Red Ladies is morphed into Reveal, and why so many women have showed up over the years to make Reveal happen. This is the way that we do the work that we need to do in the world, and the way that we figure out really who we are and what our truth is. Because when we are together as women, it's so much harder. In this space, it's harder to lie to ourselves, which we do all the time. It's so much easier to get naked. And what I mean by getting spiritually naked is just telling the truth. Just tell the truth about who you are, what it is you want, what you need. And that's what we're here today to do, to tell the truth together. To be the love that we are, and to move that out into the world. All right, blessed be. Amen.